Rising home prices, shocker. Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. So a lot of us have noticed the high home prices in the market today. Very high home prices. A lot of people have blamed high home prices for the lack of home sales because home sales are way down. So I want to cover what is the history of yearly home prices for the most recent 15 years. This goes all the way back to the housing crash era. I want to talk about the effect that the inflation between 2020 and 2024, what was the impact of that inflation on home prices? Did that cause the high home prices we see today? So I'm going to cover this. History of home prices. Did the 2020 through 2024 inflation lead to these high home prices? So home prices are way up. The 2011 median home price, $166,000. So 2011 was 3 years after the housing crash. We were still in the housing crash because when the housing crash occurred, a lot of homes became available suddenly for reasons I will discuss. The housing crash still existed in 2011. Interest rates were low. The Fed had dropped interest rates to near zero. The median home price in 2011, $166,000. Today, the median home price is $407,000. Huge increase in the median home price. And it seems like not that long either, like 14, 15 years, the prices have almost tripled. So what led to the sharp home price increase? The first thing that occurred, the 2008 housing crash, home builders kind of stopped building. When the housing crash occurred, a lot of home inventory came on the market for reasons I'm going to explain here. Not necessarily new homes. A lot of existing homes came on the market for sale all at once. There were loans back in those days that allowed you to buy a home for like nothing down or really low monthly payments that had a time limit, and then all of a sudden the monthly payment shot up and the payment became unaffordable. In 2008, the housing crash occurred. Home builders really reduced their building because there were no buyers. There was not enough demand. There were underwater homes. Back in the housing crash era, there were underwater homes where the outstanding mortgage still owed on the home was more than the home value. So what happened is this. When these, they were called liar loans, they were called negative amortization loans, where basically if you had a pulse, you could get a home loan and buy a home back in those days. When all those people stopped making their payments, those homes got foreclosed on by the lender and became available on the open market. And there were thousands and thousands and thousands of homes, millions actually, that got foreclosed on by the lender. And what happens is when you suddenly increase the supply of something, the price will drop. For example, a lot of people think about mining asteroids for gold. If you found an asteroid made of pure gold and you mined it and brought it to Earth, the price of gold would plummet because the supply would suddenly increase. The value of things comes from scarcity. The home price values, if there's a sudden increase in supply like there was during the housing crash, it will cause home prices to drop. And that's what happened. Underwater homes were homes where the mortgage was higher than the value of the home after the drop. So, for example, there could have been a $350,000 mortgage loan on a home back then, and the home price had fallen to $200,000. And you might say, how could a home price fall from $350,000 down to $200,000? It happened. Millions of homes it happened to. That's how much supply came online all of a sudden. Because what was happening was homeowners were walking away. They were abandoning their homes. When the huge increase in supply of homes came on the market, foreclosed on by the lender, and we're talking millions of homes here, when the supply suddenly increased, a lot of homeowners said, I'm not going to keep making payments on a loan of $350,000 when the home's only worth $200,000 because of the huge increase in supply. So homeowners walked away, they abandoned their homes. Between 2007 and 2011, 5.7 million foreclosed homes came on the market. Almost 6 million homes suddenly hit the market. Huge increase in supply. When you increase the supply of something, let's say, for example, Ferrari suddenly started making 1 million cars a day. I know it's an extreme example, but just imagine how much cheaper Ferraris would become if there were 1 million new Ferraris every day. They would have to give them away. There are not enough people who want Ferraris. The supply would be so great, the price of a Ferrari would drop. So that's the way supply and demand works. When there's high supply and demand stays the same, the high supply causes the price to drop. So that's what happened. 5.7 million foreclosed homes back in the housing crash days. So that led to home builders. They sort of really reduced their building of new homes. It led to underbuilding. The housing crash led to underbuilding. Home builders stopped because there were too many homes for sale. There were 5.7 million foreclosed homes suddenly vacant and ready to be sold, and there were no takers. Nobody wanted to buy a home during the housing crash. Everyone was afraid when this started happening. You know, how much lower could home prices go? I don't want to, even though this home has fallen to $200,000, what if it falls to $50,000 or $100,000? So I'm not going to buy any homes. So people did not want to buy homes. This was a huge increase in supply, and it scared people because there was no way to know back then how much lower the price of homes could fall. So home builders had to sort of stop building. There were too many homes for sale due to all the foreclosures. And then all of a sudden, when the millennial generation started coming of age and got to the point where they started buying homes, interest rates that got set to zero by the Fed in the housing crash days. The Fed, in 2008, the Federal Reserve reduced interest rates to about 0%. That was called ZIRP, zero interest rate policy. So the millennial generation came online, started buying homes. The interest rates were near zero, and they started buying up homes. And because of this underbuilding, the supply was very low all of a sudden. The demand shot up, and the opposite thing happened. Instead of a huge drop in the home price, now we have the opposite problem. The supply dropped and the demand started increasing because interest rates were so low. The price of homes started shooting up. So the normal home price percentage increase. I want to discuss what you should expect in your life for how much homes should go up in price annually per year. This is over a very long period of time. The National Association of Realtors studied this, and they found that about a 5% increase in the price of homes on average over a very long period per year, 5% per year, is about normal, okay? That's about normal. So now I want to give you some numbers for how much home prices increased over the years. Starting with 2011, the median home price was $166,000. By 2014, home price median got up to $208,000. And that was an increase of about 23% in 3 years. So all of a sudden, the low interest rates, all this inventory got bought up, and the home builders had stopped building. So now all of a sudden, there's not enough supply. An oversupply shock followed by an undersupply shock is what happened. So all of a sudden, by 2014, the median home price had increased by about 23%. In a span of 3 years, from 2011, shot up to $208,000. Okay, by 2020, median home price shot up to $322,000 by 2020, okay? And in 2020, that was an increase of 17.4% over the prior year. Remember, I said that over the long term, the National Association of Realtors determined that about a 5% annual increase in home price was normal. We're talking in 2020, that was one of the inflation years, by the way. The inflation years were 2020 through 2024. In 2020, the price of homes jumped almost 18% in 1 year. The next year, home prices in 2021 shot up another 11%, about 11%. So about 18% 1 year in 2020, then another 11%. In 2022, home prices shot up another right around 9%. So 18%, 11%, 9% in those inflation years. And so all of a sudden, by 2022, we're at $388,000 median home price, 2022, okay? So after the Fed started raising interest rates in 2022, home price increases started to fall. So there was actually a decline in home price values in 2023, and so far in 2025, there's been a drop in home values. But I just want to point out what happened. During the housing crash, interest rates went to zero, and home builders stopped building, and there were 5.7 million foreclosed homes. Huge increase in supply. The millennials grew up, started buying homes, the interest rates were low, so there was no supply, and all of a sudden increasing demand because of millennials and because of the low interest rates. And in 2020, starting from the work from home period, that also caused a huge increase in demand for homes. And again, there just hasn't been enough supply. So right now we're at a $407,000 median home price. So when these sort of shocks happen, the home builders stopped building, a huge drop in supply going forward, right? Because they stopped building sort of in 2008. By 2014, they had not been building for those years because the inventory of foreclosed homes was still being bought back up. So we get to 2014, and we're already at a 208,000 median home price, a huge jump from this, right? 166,000. So these supply shocks are devastating for home buyers. So this is how we got there. The one factor I didn't mention was the inflation years 2020 through 2024. Remember that everything was going up in price. Car prices were going up, grocery prices were going up. Pretty much everything shot up in price due to inflation. The cost of home building materials due to inflation also spiked. So that's why, in 2020, there was an 18% 1 year increase in home prices, and then the next year 11% increase in home prices, and then the next year 9% increase in home prices. All those factors. Inflation really did a number on home price values. So I just want a parting thought is this price going to drop? Probably. It already is in some markets. The median home price, depending on where you live in the country, is already dropping. So it's not going to be the same sort of housing crash, though, in 2008. And here's why. In 2008, there were these funky loans. There were negative amortization loans. You can look those up online. I don't want to go into the details, but negative amortization loans, neg-am loans, and there were liar loans back during these days that allowed many people to buy their first home and then not be able to afford the payments that suddenly increased a few years down the road. So those types of loans are no longer available. In fact, legislation was passed to sort of outlaw those sorts of loans, and it's much more difficult to get a mortgage now. So yes, the prices will probably come down from this median, right, annually, because this year alone, home prices, the median home price has already fallen 1.3%. It's down 1.3%, and we're only in the middle of the year so far. So the median home price will probably fall, but don't expect a housing crash sort of fall. We're not going to see $350,000 homes suddenly drop to being worth only $200,000. It's not going to happen. So if you're thinking about buying a home, the only other question you should ask is, with interest rates being 7%, is this a good time to buy? I would say probably not, for two reasons. One, I think the median home price is going to fall, keep going down. We're already down in the middle of 2025, the middle of the year, we're already down about 1.3%. So I think this will fall further, and interest rates are still too high. So if you wait to make your purchase through the end of this year or early 2026, I would expect mortgage interest rates will be lower and the median home price will fall. But with one caveat, and listen carefully to this is important, okay? Because if the economy suddenly improves, especially the job market, if the job market starts improving, we're not going to see a drop in the median home price. It'll actually start going up. If the economy improves and everyone starts getting a lot more confident about their, not losing their job, more people will start buying homes, and this will not fall. So that's the one thing to keep in mind. If you decide, I'm going to wait for the median home price to fall further and for interest rates to drop, you're definitely, almost certainly going to see a drop in interest rates. But whether the home prices will fall, it's kind of iffy because there are already signs that the economy is starting to improve. So if you have any questions about this, please post those in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have. And I really want to thank everyone for watching. Have a great weekend.